So this is my. Now I'm gonna explain my story from 5 years old, 5.5 years old, from Israel till 18. So when I was in with my mom. Well, I won't remember all the details. There are many things I forgot to mention before, and I guess when I get to little stories, specific stories, because so much has happened, and you will hear more details about stuff or stuff that I forgot to mention before. I'm trying to say it briefly. So we came to Israel, and my mom wanted help from her father, my grandfather. Nobody knew I existed, turns out. She hid that she had children, and my grandfather was supporting her financially, turns out, because she didn't work. But he told her to come to Israel because he couldn't support her financially anymore, and he wanted her to get the help from the family. And she did, in a way. She was staying with my uncle for like a year and a half, and later we stayed alone at the first grade, and then second grade to fourth grade we were with my grandma, and then she got married for the second time. I will say she would not be so abusive around people, especially if we lived around people. It was a little bit, but not a lot. But when I was in the first grade with her, we lived alone. I remember living in the house, and I would sleep on a mattress, but there were no sheets. It was not very hygienic. I remember cockroaches running around, and my grandma told me that she would not wash me. Like I was, that she saw me when she met me, and my hair was stuck to my head because it was so dirty. So I guess there was some neglect as well. But what I remember from the first grade is that she would hit me for hours, and I would check out. I was just, I would not, it's like I left my body and would just leave the body for her to hit. And I would not answer her. I would just check out, and that would make her more upset. How come I'm not answering her? But I just couldn't deal. I just checked out on the first grade. And I remember her all the time saying that I'm a bad girl, that I peaked until age 5. I was good, and then I turned really bad and evil from age 5. And she would say that I'm not helping her enough, and I'm not doing enough for her, and I just remember being hit every day for many, many hours, and I was very nervous, and many times she would just kick me out of the apartment, and just get me out of the apartment, and I would wander in the building, and I would go to my neighbors. Were old, but they were nice, and they would feed me. And I remember I wanted to be really nice, so they would want to take me to their house to raise me. But obviously it never happened. So that was the first grade with her. Second to fourth, my mom was living with my grandma, but she was all the time with men. She would date many, many men, and I would not see her at all. And I remember crying a lot at night for her never being around. And I remember her getting ready for her dates in her room. And then she would want me to find, and her room was a complete mess. Like you could not see the floor. And she would hit me because she was nervous because she couldn't find a shoe. And she would say that I hid the shoe, or I hid her earring or her dress. So she would beat me in the room before she would get ready to her dates, for her dates. From time to time, she would introduce me to this man she was dating, and something strange would always happen, that they would completely ignore me, like not talk to me, not pay attention to me, and I didn't know why for years, including when she got married to her second husband. He would just hate me and completely ignore me, and I didn't know why for many, many years. But this is how I grew up. I thought that something was wrong with me, that for some reason men would completely not pay any attention to me. Only to learn later when I was 18 and I would try to reconcile between her and her Dutch boyfriend at the time. He told me, she went to see him in the Netherlands, and he told me, your mom said you're crazy and I should stay away. And I believed her because I saw many strange things in the house. But then she came to the Netherlands and you weren't around, and the craziness became even worse. And then I understood it wasn't you, it was her. She was the crazy one. And then it hit me that that's probably what she told all the guys she dated, including the second husband she had, that I was crazy and they should stay away. And so they ignored me for that reason. She was after that, the fourth grade, when we were with I had some stepsisters and him. It was between like the fourth grade until I was in the 8th grade. Until the 7th grade, the end of the 7th grade, that she was with him. She would say that the stepsisters are the kind of daughters that she wanted, and I'm evil. And she would hit me in the kitchen when they don't see, or she would ignore me. She actually ignored me for a few good years, because one time when we were arranging the house, I threw, like as a game, a shirt at her, and that's it. She stopped talking to me for a few years. But she would always say that I'm evil. Then she divorced, and in 8th grade, I lived again alone with her in somewhere in Israel called Narea. And that was a really bad year for me, to live with her alone. She wouldn't work. She wouldn't hold on to a job more than a day. So I had to work. And I was, people wouldn't pay me well enough. So there wasn't enough money for food. And so I would give up the food, and I would tell her that she should eat. And I grew up, counting, feeling very, very poor, and counting like pennies, and thinking, wow, maybe one day I can have a burger. Wow, maybe one day maybe I can have a shawarma. Only to discover later that she had financial support from the family. She was just saving it up instead of paying the bills or buying food. So there was money. She just made me feel like there wasn't any money around to buy food. So and that's really ingrained in me, that feeling that there's no food. Until this day, it's hard for me to throw food away, even if it's gone bad, because the fear of not having food is strong. she was at that time she would do like she would try to hypnotize me and say that in a past life I killed her in different versions. One time I was jealous of her as her sister in Salem, the witch hunt, and I told on her because she was more beautiful, and I got her killed. And so I was evil back then, and that's what was going on between us. One time she said that I was at the Holocaust, and I got her killed at the Holocaust, or I was the German soldier at the Holocaust who got her killed, and so I'm evil. So she would hypnotize me like past life, supposedly give me like those stories, and and she would be hitting me a lot, all the time, and she all the time told me I lost certain things she had, like something she wrote, something, and she would blame me for her not getting her stuff done. Um, During all this time, I would still go to school. And then we moved to Tel Aviv. In the beginning, we were with like old Russian couple as a roommate, and uh, it was better because around people she couldn't do too much violence. And then we moved to a house after a year, apartment by ourselves, and then it became the worst of the worst. I would just enter the door, she would hit me. I had all the time to prepare food. I would leave during recess in school because the school was nearby. I would make her a steak, and then I would come back to study. I would just walk through the door, I would get hit. Obviously, I couldn't study anything. I couldn't learn anything. If I got accepted to something scientific program because I really liked science, and I had to quit it because she didn't want me to participate in it. She would wake me up in the middle of the night and just hit me. So I got scared to sleep. And on my birthday, she would lock me up in the room. And I was born in January, so it would rain. And she said that it's raining because God and Jesus, there was always a Christian element, Jesus were disappointed of me and who I am, and because I was evil, and so I don't deserve a birthday, and that's why to these days birthdays are really important for me, and I really celebrate them. She all the time wanted to control me. Even though I was very obedient, I never yelled at her, I never raised my hand at her, I never screamed at her, but apparently I wasn't obedient enough for her. So she all the time wanted me to be obedient. So at some point she stopped calling me by name, and she took a bell, like a servant's bell, and she said, "You no longer have a name, and you need to bow to me, and I will call you by the bell." And she knew, like, she used psychology against me. Like, she said she knows that in Vietnam they didn't give the American veterans time to sleep, and so to brainwash them. So she would do that. She would keep me up many hours, and then after I'm really tired and I'm just willing to do anything, she would say, "Okay, write down that you're evil, that you did this and this to me, that this and this, and sign it." So I would do anything. I just wanted to sleep. I would write anything. I would say anything, only so she would leave me alone. And so she did that a lot. And when she had debt because of her second husband, who had a failed business, and she co-signed his loans. She had that, and that debt, it was in the millions of shekels, and she didn't go to the court to settle payments. So what happened was that she had they wanted to imprison her already because she didn't do any payments and she wouldn't appear in court. And then she told me, like, you figure it out or I commit suicide. I will not go to court, and I don't want to go to declare bankruptcy because I want to travel abroad. So I had to figure it out. Otherwise, she would commit suicide. And I did. I did eventually, and that's a different story for a different time, but I did eventually. And I would work as a waitress, double shifts after school to help her pay the debts. But that wasn't enough for her. So at some point, when I was 16 or 17, she said she organized a job for me with her friend, and I should go and meet with him. And she sent me to work in a strip club. And it was I was there for one night, and it was a very, very traumatic night for me, because everything about the night was horrible. But that's another story for another time. But that's in a nutshell. You know, she put me to work as a stripper to give her more money, and then she would laugh at me that I didn't give her enough money, and she would get more money, even though I earned the most money at that night than any other stripper at the club, because I was new, not because I was better. But I ran away because it was like signing up with a mob. Like the contract was very, very bad. And I saw the Russian girls. They were so beautiful. And the Russian girls, they would be sick and they had to work. Like they didn't get a day off. And I knew I had to run. And I almost got raped that night with the encouragement of, I don't know, 200 men in the strip club in front of everybody to see. But the guard saved me. He saw that and he saved me from that. So yeah, later she left to when I was 18. She left to visit her husband. Her boyfriend at the time, the Dutch boyfriend. Actually, before that, she wanted to have relations with him in the apartment, and it bothered him that I might hear. So she would kick me out, and I was wandering outside alone. I couldn't go to sleep in my bed, so I would sleep on the staircase. Or I just would wander around and visit people and talk to them. Tel Aviv was very awake at night at that time, so I could go many places and talk to people, and I wasn't alone. Anyway, she left when at 18, and then I started to realize that I was terrified of her, and that I guess that I was abused. It didn't hit me till then. I thought everybody grew up like this, and that it was normal. And obviously I was very isolated from family, from friends. I wasn't allowed to have friends too much. Family was disconnected. Just classic abusers' behavior. And she left me with debt, new debt. After we paid her debt and she was free of debt, She told people I needed to go for some operation in Europe for my asthma, and they gave money. They gave her money from their mortgages, and then she gave them my phone number, and I had to pay huge sums of money to them. She left me with debt, and she wanted money also that I sent her in Europe. And I remember her calling and said, "I don't care what you do, be a prostitute, you give me the money." So I worked as a massage, not a proper massage, but a massage that does happy ending. And that was terrible for me. I remember I would cry. I would cry in front of clients while doing it, and nobody cared. But thank goodness I didn't go beyond this. I always, like, for some reason I knew where to stop. But I did pay all the debts that I owed, and I even sent her money, only for her to come back later after they broke up, and I didn't agree to live with her and anymore. But I said I will support her, and I did until I was 20. And when I was 20, I got very ill. I was bedbound, and she called me on my birthday, and she said, "If you don't bring me money, there's no use for you." And she disconnected her relations with me because I couldn't bring her any money. And that was it with my relationship with her. And I remember trying to commit suicide that day on my 20th birthday. But my girlfriend who was living with me at the time noticed something was off, and she stopped me from, I was planning to do it in the ocean. She stopped me from going out the door. And that's the end of my relationship with my mom. But there was another incident when I was 24, but that's for a different time. That's the story in a nutshell.